The senator's son laughed as he poured scalding coffee down a stranger's neck. The quiet man didn't flinch, didn't scream, just turned around with eyes that had watched men die. "Do it again," he said softly. The rich kid's smirk vanished. His girlfriend filmed a little girl sobbing on the sidewalk, "Daddy, Daddy," and posted it with laughing emojis. The corrupt cop slammed the stranger into a patrol car while the teenager spit in his face through the window. But none of them knew the man in handcuffs had once carried that same senator 3 miles through enemy gunfire with 2 bullets in his own body and lived to tell no one. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If this story touches your heart, subscribe and stay until the end. Now let our story begin. The bell above the door of Maplewood Diner had been ringing the same tired note for 43 years. Helen Marsh knew that sound better than her own heartbeat. She'd been working this counter since she was 19 years old, and now at 62, she could tell everything about a customer just by how that bell sang when they walked in. A soft jingle meant regulars, folks who belonged here, working people with calloused hands and honest appetites. A harsh clang meant trouble. At 7:47 on that Tuesday morning in early November, the bell screamed. Helen looked up from the coffee pot she was filling and felt her stomach drop. 2 young people stood in the doorway, and everything about them was wrong for this place. The boy wore a sweater that probably cost more than Helen's monthly rent. The girl behind him was already holding up her phone, filming like the whole world was her audience. But Helen's attention didn't stay on them long. Her eyes moved to the man sitting alone at the far end of the counter. Booth 7. The quiet booth. His booth. Garrett Cole had been coming to this diner every Tuesday and Thursday morning for 3 years. He always ordered the same thing: black coffee bowl, a vegetable soup, slice of whatever pie Helen had made fresh that morning. He never complained, never sent anything back, never talked much at all, really. But Helen had learned to read him. She'd seen the scars on his forearms when he rolled up his sleeves on hot days. She'd noticed how he always sat with his back to the wall facing the door. She'd watched him move, economical, precise, like a man who'd learned that wasted motion could get you killed. She didn't know what he'd done before he came to Maplewood. She'd never asked. But she knew enough to know that Garrett Cole was not a man you wanted to cross. The rich boy clearly didn't know that. "Excuse me," the young man announced, his voice cutting through the quiet morning chatter like a blade. "We need the best table, now." Helen set down the coffee pot. "Morning, hun. All our tables are—" "I didn't ask for your life story, sweetheart." The boy snapped his fingers twice, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Table. Window seat. Chop, chop." The girl giggled, still filming. "Oh my God, Marcus, you're so bad." Marcus. Helen recognized the name now. Marcus Pemberton III. The senator's son. She'd seen his face in the newspaper, always standing behind his father at campaign events, smiling that practiced smile. He wasn't smiling now. He was scanning the diner with the expression of someone who'd stepped in something unpleasant. "This place smells like poor people and regret," Marcus said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Jade, are you getting this? My followers need to see what real America looks like." Jade. The girl panned her phone across the diner. Helen watched the other customers shrink in their seats, avoiding the camera like it was a weapon. All except Garrett. He didn't look up. He just kept eating his soup, slow and methodical, like Marcus Pemberton didn't exist, and that Helen realized, with a cold knot forming in her stomach, was going to be a problem. Marcus noticed too. "Hey." Marcus walked toward the counter, his boat shoes squeaking on the linoleum. "Hey, I'm talking to everyone in this dump. Show some respect." Garrett lifted his spoon, took another bite, chewed. Helen stepped forward quickly. "Sir, there's a nice booth by the window. Just let me clear it. And hold on." Marcus held up his hand, his eyes locked on Garrett's back. "Hold on. I want to see something." He walked closer. Jade followed her phone steady, her smile growing. Marcus stopped right behind Garrett's stool, close enough to touch. Hey, homeless guy." Garrett didn't turn around. "I know you can hear me." Marcus leaned in, examining Garrett's worn flannel jacket, his work boots, his calloused hands wrapped around the soup bowl. "What's the matter? Too drunk to respond, or just too stupid?" Helen's heart was hammering now. "Sir, please, he's just having his breakfast." "Quiet." Marcus didn't even look at her. His attention was fixed on Garrett with the intensity of a child burning ants with a magnifying glass. "I'm conducting a social experiment. Jade, make sure you're getting good audio." Jade moved closer. "Crystal clear, babe." Marcus leaned down until his mouth was inches from Garrett's ear. "I'm Senator Harrison Pemberton's son. You know what that means. It means I own people like you. It means my family has more money than everyone in this sad little restaurant will make in their entire pathetic lives combined." Garrett set down his spoon. Helen held her breath. But Garrett didn't turn around. He simply reached for his coffee cup, lifted it to his lips, and took a slow sip. That calm Helen knew was more dangerous than any threat. But Marcus read it as weakness. "Oh my God." Marcus laughed, looking back at Jade. "He's actually scared. Look at him. He won't even make eye contact. This is incredible content." "Call him something else," Jade suggested, giggling. "See if he cries." Marcus grinned. He picked up the fresh cup of coffee that Helen had just poured, the one that had been sitting under the heating element near boiling. Helen saw what was coming a half-second before it happened. "Don't," she started. Too late. Marcus lifted the cup and poured the entire contents down the back of Garrett's neck. The coffee was scalding. It soaked through the flannel jacket, spreading across Garrett's shoulders, dripping down his spine. The heat had to be agonizing. Garrett didn't scream. He didn't jump up. He simply closed his eyes for a moment, just one moment, and when he opened them again, something had changed. Helen had seen that look before. Not on Garrett. On her brother 30 years ago, when he came back from Vietnam. It was the look of a man who had learned to turn off his humanity like a light switch. Garrett stood up slowly. He turned around, and for the first time he looked directly at Marcus Pemberton III. Marcus took an involuntary step backward. Up close, Garrett Cole didn't look homeless. He looked like something carved from stone and suffering. His eyes were gray-blue, and they held absolutely nothing. No anger, no fear, no recognition of Marcus as a human being. He was 6'1", and though his clothes were worn, the body beneath them was solid, functional, dangerous. "You done?" Garrett asked. His voice was quiet, controlled, like thunder heard from very far away. Marcus swallowed hard. His confidence flickered for just a moment before his ego rushed in to fill the gap. "Done, I'm just getting started, old man." Marcus straightened up, puffing out his chest. "What are you gonna do about it? Hit me, please. Please hit me. My dad's lawyers would own whatever rat hole you crawled out of." Garrett didn't respond. He simply held Marcus's gaze, unblinking. "That's what I thought." Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow now. He turned to Jade. "Look at this guy. He's probably on drugs or mentally ill. This is what happens when you don't have ambition, folks. You end up as a punching bag in some nowhere town." Jade zoomed in on Garrett's face. "Say something for the camera, sweetheart. Give us your story. How'd you become such a loser?" Garrett's eyes moved to the phone, then back to Marcus. "You should leave," he said quietly. "Excuse me." Marcus stepped forward again, his fear transforming into outrage. "Did you just threaten me? Jade, did you get that? He just threatened me." "Got it," Jade confirmed. Marcus pulled out his own phone, his fingers trembling slightly, though whether from anger or fear, Helen couldn't tell. "That's it. I'm calling someone who'll teach you some respect." He hit a number on speed dial. Helen moved down the counter toward Garrett. "Honey, please just go out the back. I'll wrap up your food. You can—" "I haven't finished my soup," Garrett said calmly. He sat back down on his stool, turning his back to Marcus once again. The dismissal was so complete, so total, that Marcus's face went scarlet. "Ray, it's Marcus. I'm at some dump called Maplewood Diner on Main Street. There's a homeless guy here who just threatened me." Yeah, he tried to attack me. My girlfriend's traumatized. I need you here now." He hung up, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You're going to regret this," Marcus said to Garrett's back. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Garrett picked up his spoon and resumed eating his soup. Helen stood behind the counter, her hands shaking as she wiped down surfaces that were already clean. The other customers had gone silent. Old Tom Murphy, who'd been a fixture at booth 3 for 20 years, was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. 2 young mothers with toddlers were gathering their things, preparing to leave. The bell above the door stayed quiet. No one wanted to be here for what was coming next. 7 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up outside, lights flashing, but no siren. Deputy Ray Dutton stepped out. He was 45 years old, with a gut that strained against his uniform and eyes that had stopped seeing justice a long time ago. Ray Dutton had been on Harrison Pemberton's payroll unofficially, of course, since the senator was just a state representative with big ambitions. Every promotion, every commendation in Ray's file had been purchased with favors and silence. He walked into the diner like he owned it. "Marcus." He nodded at the young man. "You okay?" "Ray, thank God." Marcus pointed at Garrett. "This psycho attacked me, threw hot coffee at me first, right, Jade, and then threatened to kill us both. I want him arrested." Ray's hand moved to his belt, resting on his holster. "That true?" Garrett didn't turn around. "No." "It is true," Marcus insisted. "Jade has it all on video. Show him, babe." Jade held up her phone. "Right here, officer. The whole thing." Ray didn't even look at the video. He didn't need to. He knew the script. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stand up and put your hands where I can see them." Helen stepped forward. "Ray Dutton, you know good and well what happened here. I saw everything. That boy poured coffee on Garrett, and—" "Helen!" Ray's voice went cold. "I'd hate to have to report health code violations to the county board. Heard there's been some complaints about the kitchen. Might need an inspection." Helen's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes were blazing. Garrett stood up slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm not resisting. Turn around, hands behind your back." Garrett complied. His movements were careful, precise, the movements of a man who had been in this position before and knew exactly how to survive it. Ray pulled out his handcuffs. The metal clicked around Garrett's wrists, too tight, deliberately painful. "You're under arrest for assault and threatening behavior." "There was no assault," Garrett said quietly. "There was no threat. That's not what the senator's son says." Ray leaned in close, his breath hot against Garrett's ear. "And in this town, his word is the only one that matters." Marcus was beaming now, his earlier fear completely forgotten. He held up his phone, filming Garrett being led toward the door. "This is what happens when you disrespect your betters," Marcus announced to his audience. "This is what happens when you forget your place. Take a good look, everyone. This man is nothing. He has nothing. And now he's going to jail because he was too stupid to know when to bow down." Jade laughed. "Perfect content, babe. This is going to blow up." Ray pushed Garrett toward the door. and then a sound cut through the diner that stopped everyone cold. "Daddy." The voice was small, high-pitched, terrified. Helen's head whipped toward the window. A little girl was running across the street from the public library. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, dark hair in pigtails, a pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her face twisted in horror as she saw her father in handcuffs. Garrett's entire body transformed. The stone mask cracked. Beneath it was something raw and desperate and heartbreakingly human. "Lily." His voice broke on the name. "Lily, baby, stay there. Stay." But she was already pushing through the diner door, the bell screaming above her head, her small body launching itself at her father's legs. "Daddy, what's happening? Why are they hurting you, Daddy?" Garrett dropped to his knees, his cuffed hands making it impossible to hold her properly. But he pressed his forehead against hers, his voice crumbling. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. Daddy's okay. Listen to me. Listen. Go to Miss Helen. She's going to take care of you for a little while. Just a little while. I'll come back. I promise. I promise, baby." Lily was sobbing now, her small fingers clutching at his jacket. "No, no, Daddy, don't go. Don't leave me. Mommy left. And she never came back. Please, Daddy, please." Helen was already moving, tears streaming down her face. She knelt beside the child, trying to gently pull her away. "Come on, honey. Come on. Your daddy's going to be okay. Come with Miss Helen." Ray Dutton stood by the door, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Even he hadn't expected this. But Marcus Pemberton saw something else entirely. He saw content. He raised his phone and pointed it directly at the crying child. "Oh my God," he said, laughing. "This is gold. The homeless guy has a kid. Look at her crying. This is so sad. So sad." Jade moved in for a better angle. "Get her face, Marcus. Get the tears." Garrett's head snapped up, and what Helen saw in his eyes made her blood turn to ice. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even rage. It was something older and darker, the look of a predator marking prey. "Turn off the camera." Garrett's voice had changed. Lower. Dangerous. "Now." Marcus laughed. "Or what, you're in handcuffs, loser. What are you going to do?" Garrett held his gaze, and when he spoke again, each word landed like a hammer. "You can do whatever you want to me. I've had worse. But if you point that camera at my daughter again, if you put her face on your platform, I will remember it. And I will remember you. And one day when you've forgotten all about this morning, you'll look up and I'll be there." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Marcus's hand trembled. The phone dipped slightly, but Jade grabbed his arm. "He's just trying to scare you, babe. He can't do anything. Post it." Marcus looked at his girlfriend, then at Garrett, then at the crying little girl. And because cruelty was the only language he'd ever been taught, he made his choice. "Homeless loser's kid learns consequences," he narrated as he filmed. Maybe Daddy should have thought about her before he messed with the wrong family. He hit post. Ray grabbed Garrett's arm. "Let's go." Garrett didn't resist, but as he was led past his daughter, he paused for just a moment. "Lily, look at me." The little girl raised her tear-stained face. "I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Remember that. No matter what happens, I'm coming back for you." And then he was gone, pushed through the door and into the waiting patrol car. Lily screamed. Helen held her tight, rocking her, murmuring words of comfort that felt hollow and useless. Marcus and Jade walked out laughing, high-fiving each other like they'd just won a game. The bell above the door rang one last time, its note sounding almost like a sob. And in booth 6, a man who had watched everything in silence finally moved. Colonel Walter Briggs was 78 years old, retired from a career he could never discuss with a body that was failing him, and a mind that remained razor sharp. He'd come to Maplewood 3 months ago to die quietly, surrounded by nothing that reminded him of his old life. But he'd recognized Garrett Cole the moment he first saw him. Not the faces changed, aged grew beards and disguises, but the way the man moved, the way he sat, the way he scanned every room for exits and threats. Walter knew those tells because he'd spent 40 years training men who moved exactly the same way. He also knew that code name, Wraith, the ghost, the one they sent when everyone else had failed. The operator with the highest success rate and the longest list of classified missions in the history of Joint Special Operations. The man who had saved more lives than anyone would ever know, including if the rumors were true, a certain senator during an ambush in Syria. Walter pulled out a phone that was much more sophisticated than its simple appearance suggested. He dialed a number he hadn't used in 15 years. "Get me General Rhodes," he said quietly. "Tell her it's about Wraith. Tell her it's urgent, and tell her to bring everything she has on the Pemberton rescue." He hung up and looked out the window, watching the patrol car pull away with Garrett Cole in the back seat. The senator's son had just made the worst mistake of his privileged young life, and Walter Briggs was going to make sure he paid for it. At the county police station, Ray Dutton shoved Garrett into a holding cell with more force than necessary. "Get comfortable," he sneered. "Senator Pemberton's on his way. He wants to deal with you personally." Garrett sat down on the metal bench, his back straight, his face empty. But inside his mind was racing. Lily was alone. She had no other family. Her mother, his wife Sarah, had died of cancer 2 years ago. There were no grandparents, no aunts or uncles, just him. Just a father who had left behind everything he was in order to give his daughter a normal life. If they kept him here, if they charged him, social services would take her. She would go into the system, and he knew what happened to children in the system. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, Garrett Cole felt something he hadn't experienced since he was pinned down in an alley in Aleppo, with 2 bullets in his leg and a dying senator on his back. He felt afraid. Not for himself. For her. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Ray came back with a paper cup of cold water and a smile that made Garrett's skin crawl. "Your daughter's with that waitress for now," Ray said. "But Child Services has been called. Standard procedure when a parent gets arrested. Single father, no other guardians on file. She'll probably be in foster care by tonight." Garrett didn't move, didn't react. But something behind his eyes shifted. Ray noticed. The smile faltered. "You know what I'm going to recommend they expedite the process. Get that little girl into a proper home. One where her daddy isn't a violent criminal." "I haven't been convicted of anything." "Doesn't matter. The accusation is enough. Senator Pemberton has a lot of friends in family court. You'll be lucky if you ever see that kid again." Ray turned and walked away, his laughter echoing off the concrete walls. Garrett sat in silence. 1 hour later, a different officer appeared outside his cell. This one was young, couldn't have been more than 25. Fresh-faced, nervous looking at Garrett with something that might have been guilt. "Sir, I'm Officer Sarah Mitchell. I just wanted to let you know. I saw the video. The real one. From the diner's security camera." Garrett looked up. "I don't know what's going on here." Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know what I saw. You didn't do anything wrong. And that kid Marcus, he was the aggressor. The whole thing is on tape." "Does that matter?" Sarah's face fell. I don't know. I'm just a rookie. I don't have any pull here. But I wanted you to know that someone sees the truth. And I'm going to try to help even if I don't know how yet. She walked away before Garrett could respond. But for the first time in hours, something other than fear flickered in his chest. Hope. Small. Fragile. Barely there. But present. At the Maplewood diner, Helen sat in the back office with Lily curled up on her lap. The little girl had cried herself to sleep, her cheeks still wet, her small fingers clutching a worn military medal that she'd pulled from her backpack. Helen looked at the medal. A bronze star with a V for valor. She thought about this man who'd been sitting at her counter for 3 years eating soup and saying nothing. And she thought about the monsters who had destroyed his life for entertainment. She picked up her phone and called her nephew. Dean, it's Aunt Helen. I need your help. There's a story here, a real one, and I think it might be bigger than anything you've ever covered. On the other end of the line, Dean Ashford, 35 years old, investigative journalist for the regional paper, always hungry for the truth, sat up straight. Tell me everything. Helen took a deep breath. It started with a cup of coffee. Dean Ashford had been a journalist for 12 years. He'd covered corruption scandals, embezzlement schemes, and every flavor of small-town politics that Pennsylvania had to offer. But something in his aunt's voice made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Start from the beginning, he said, grabbing his notebook. Don't leave anything out. And Helen told him everything. The coffee, the arrest, the little girl screaming for her father, and the way Garrett Cole had looked at Marcus Pemberton like a man who knew exactly how to kill someone and was choosing not to. This guy, Dean said slowly. You said he's been coming to your diner for 3 years, every Tuesday and Thursday. Never misses. And you don't know anything about his background. Helen paused. I know he's not what he looks like. I know he carries himself like someone who's seen things, and I know that little girl is his whole world. Dean was already typing on his laptop, pulling up databases he probably shouldn't have access to. Garrett Cole, he muttered. Let's see who you really are. The search came back almost empty. Driver's license issued in Pennsylvania 3 years ago. No prior address. No employment history before his current job as a janitor at Maplewood High School. No social media. No digital footprint whatsoever. That's not possible, Dean said. What do you mean? Everyone has a history, Aunt Helen. Everyone has something. This guy has nothing. It's like he appeared out of thin air 3 years ago. Dean leaned back, his investigative instincts screaming. Either Garrett Cole is the most boring man in America, he said, or that's not his real name. And someone went to a lot of trouble to make him disappear. At the police station, Garrett sat motionless on the metal bench, his eyes fixed on a point on the far wall. He was running calculations in his head. Escape routes, leverage points, vulnerabilities in the building's security, old habits. He could be out of this cell in under 3 minutes if he wanted. The lock was standard county issue. He'd picked worse with a paperclip and a broken fingernail. The guard rotation left a 45-second window every 20 minutes. The back exit led to a parking lot with minimal surveillance. But then what? He'd be a fugitive. Lily would become a ward of the state. Everything he'd built, the quiet life, the second chance, the promise he'd made to Sarah before she died, would be destroyed. So he sat. And he waited. And he prayed to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore, that someone out there would see the truth. The cell door buzzed. Deputy Ray Dutton walked in with a swagger that made Garrett's jaw tighten. Got some good news and some bad news, Ray said, grinning. Good news is Senator Pemberton's running late, something about a campaign event, so you get to enjoy our hospitality a little longer. He paused, savoring the moment. Bad news is Child Services just picked up your daughter. Garrett's head snapped up. They couldn't reach any emergency contacts because you don't have any, do you? Sad. Really sad. So little Lily is on her way to a group home right now. Temporary placement, they said. But we both know how that goes. Temporary becomes permanent, real quick. Garrett stood up slowly. Ray's hand moved to his holster. Easy now. You're already looking at felony charges. Don't make it worse. Where did they take her? That's need-to-know information, and you don't need to know. Garrett took a step forward. His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. I'm going to ask you one more time. Where's my daughter? Ray's confidence flickered. Up close, the man in the cell didn't look like a vagrant anymore. He looked like something else entirely. Something dangerous. But Ray had a badge and a gun, and 20 years of believing those things made him untouchable. Or what? Ray laughed nervously. What are you going to do from in there? Garrett didn't answer. He just looked at Ray with those empty gray-blue eyes, and something in that gaze made the deputy take an involuntary step backward. You're crazy, Ray muttered. You know that, crazy and stupid. He turned and walked out quickly, the door slamming shut behind him. But his hands were shaking. 15 miles away, in a nondescript government building, Lily Cole sat in a plastic chair that was too big for her, clutching her father's Bronze Star medal like a lifeline. A woman in a gray pantsuit was talking to her, but Lily wasn't listening. She was thinking about her daddy's face when they took him away. The way his voice had cracked when he said her name. The promise he'd made. I'm coming back for you. Lily, honey, are you listening? The woman Mrs. Patterson, her name tag said, was kneeling in front of her, now her face arranged in that fake kind expression that adults used when they were about to say something terrible. Your daddy is in some trouble right now, sweetie, so you're going to stay with us for a little while, just until things get sorted out. Doesn't that sound nice? I want my daddy. I know you do, honey, but I want my daddy. Lily's voice rose. He didn't do anything wrong. Those people were mean to him. He didn't do anything, Mrs. Patterson sighed. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Lily. And when they do, my daddy doesn't make mistakes. Lily stood up, her small body trembling with fury. He's a hero. He saved people. He has medals. Real ones. And you're all liars, and I hate you. She ran. Mrs. Patterson called out, but Lily was already through the door, sprinting down the hallway, looking for an exit, looking for anything that would take her back to her father. She made it almost to the front entrance before a security guard caught her. Whoa, whoa, little lady. Where do you think you're going? Let me go. I have to find my daddy. Let me go. The guard held her gently but firmly as she kicked and screamed, her small fists pounding uselessly against his chest. And in that moment, Lily Cole looked exactly like what she was, a terrified 7-year-old whose entire world had been ripped away in a single morning. Back at the diner, Colonel Walter Briggs was still waiting for his call to be returned. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered on the first ring. This is Briggs. The voice on the other end was female, authoritative, and carried the weight of command. Colonel, this is General Amanda Rhodes. I got your message about Wraith. Start talking. General, thank you for calling back. I'm in a small town called Maplewood, Pennsylvania. About 3 hours ago, I witnessed something that I think you need to know about. He told her everything. The diner, the senator's son, the arrest, the little girl. When he finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Are you absolutely certain it's him? Rhodes asked. Wraith went dark after the Syria mission. Complete disappearance. No one's seen or heard from him in 3 years. It's him, General. I trained with men like him for 40 years. I know the signs, And more importantly, I recognized the name Pemberton. I think we both know why that's significant. Another pause. When Rhodes spoke again, her voice was ice. Senator Harrison Pemberton, the man Master Sergeant Cole carried out of Aleppo, the man whose life he saved while bleeding out from 2 gunshot wounds. The same. And now that man's son has had Cole arrested on false charges. That's correct. Does the senator know? Does he have any idea who his son just attacked? I don't believe so, General. Cole's identity was classified. Pemberton was unconscious for most of the rescue. He never saw his savior's face. Rhodes exhaled sharply. This is a disaster. If this goes public. It's already going public. The senator's son posted videos to social media. They're going viral as we speak. Millions of people are watching a decorated war hero being humiliated and arrested for crimes he didn't commit. Good God. There's more. Cole has a daughter, 7 years old. She's been taken by child services. If she goes into the system, she won't. Rhodes's voice hardened into something that sounded like a declaration of war. Colonel, I need you to stay on site. I'm mobilizing now. I'll have assets on the ground within 6 hours. What kind of assets? The kind that remind people like Senator Pemberton that there are some things even money can't buy. She paused. And Colonel, thank you. You might have just saved a good man's life. The line went dead. Walter Briggs set down his phone and looked out the window at the quiet street. The storm was coming, and God help anyone who got in its way. At the Pemberton estate, Marcus was celebrating. Look at these numbers, he crowed, scrolling through his phone. 2 million views in 3 hours. This is insane. I'm trending Jade. Actually trending. Jade was curled up on the couch beside him, manicured nails tapping her own screen. The comments are wild. People are calling you a king, a legend. Because I am, Marcus grinned. Did you see that guy's face when Ray cuffed him priceless? Absolutely priceless. The bit with the kid was the best part, Jade said. So dramatic, so sad. She put on a mocking voice. Daddy, don't leave me. Mommy left and she never came back. They both laughed. Neither of them noticed the man standing in the doorway. Senator Harrison Pemberton was 58 years old, with the silver hair and practiced smile of a career politician. He'd built his reputation on being tough on crime, tough on immigration, tough on anything that polled well with his base. Right now, he looked like he wanted to strangle his own son. Marcus. The laughter died instantly. Marcus scrambled to his feet, nearly dropping his phone. Dad? Hey, I didn't hear you come in. I gathered. Pemberton walked into the room, his movements precise and controlled. I just got off the phone with my chief of staff. He tells me that you've become a social media sensation. Something about a confrontation at a diner. Yeah, it was hilarious. This homeless guy. I saw the video. Marcus's smile faltered. Oh, well, then you know he deserved it. He was disrespectful. He was eating soup. What? I watched the video, Marcus. All of it. Not just your edited version. The diner's security footage has already leaked online. I watched a man sit quietly at a counter while my son poured scalding coffee on him. I watched that man stand up and do absolutely nothing threatening while you called the police. And then I watched you film a crying child and mock her for entertainment. Marcus's face went pale. Dad, do you have any idea what you've done? Pemberton's voice rose for the first time, decades of political composure cracking. I have an election in 6 months. 6 months. And now every news outlet in the country is running stories about how Senator Pemberton's son bullies homeless veterans. We don't know he's a veteran. He has a Bronze Star, you idiot. His daughter was carrying it. It's all over the footage. A Bronze Star with a Valor designation. Do you know what that means? It means he did something incredibly brave under enemy fire, and you poured coffee on him." Marcus had no response. For the first time in his life, his father's money and power weren't going to make this go away. Jade stood up quietly. "I should probably go—" "Sit down." Pemberton's command froze her in place. "You're part of this too. 2 million views of cruelty. 2 million people watching my family behave like monsters." He pulled out his phone, dialing. "Who are you calling?" Marcus asked. "The chief of police. We're going to fix this. Drop the charges, release the man, issue an apology." "But Dad—" "Shut up, Marcus." Pemberton held the phone to his ear. "I'm going to spend the next 3 months doing damage control because of your stupidity. The least you can do is stay silent while I clean up your mess." The phone connected. "Chief, it's Harrison Pemberton. We need to talk about the man your deputy arrested this morning. I want the charges dropped immediately." He listened for a moment. "What do you mean, complications?" His face changed. "What do you mean, federal interest?" He listened for another long moment, and with every passing second, his expression grew darker. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked. Pemberton looked at his son with an expression that was equal parts fury and fear. "Someone from the Pentagon just called the station. They're asking questions about the man you had arrested. Very specific questions. The kind of questions that come with security clearances and classified files." "I don't understand. Neither do I." Pemberton was already moving toward the door. "But I'm going to find out. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone. Don't post anything. Don't even breathe loudly until I figure out what's going on." He slammed the door behind him. Marcus and Jade sat in silence. For the first time, Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before in his 20 years of privilege and protection. Fear. At the police station, Officer Sarah Mitchell was breaking about a dozen regulations. She'd pulled the security footage from the diner, the real footage, not the edited clips Marcus had posted. She'd downloaded the arrest report. She'd accessed Deputy Dutton's file and found a pattern of complaints that had been buried over the years. And now she was sitting in her patrol car, staring at her phone, trying to decide what to do. "Just do your job," she whispered to herself. "Follow orders. Keep your head down. Don't make waves." That's what her training officer had told her. That's what everyone had told her since she'd joined the force 6 months ago. But then she thought about the little girl. Lily Cole, 7 years old, screaming for her father, while Marcus Pemberton filmed her tears. Sarah had a niece that age. Screw it. She started typing an email to the FBI field office in Philadelphia. She attached every file she'd gathered, every piece of evidence that proved Garrett Cole had been wrongfully arrested. Her finger hovered over the send button. If she did this, she'd be done. Dutton would destroy her career. Maybe worse. But if she didn't do this, she'd have to live with herself. She pressed send. Then she got out of her car and walked back into the station, knowing that everything was about to change. In his cell, Garrett heard footsteps approaching. Multiple sets, moving fast. The door buzzed open, and 3 men walked in. Deputy Dutton, the chief of police, and Senator Harrison Pemberton himself. Garrett stood up slowly. Pemberton stared at him through the bars, his political mask firmly in place. "So you're the man causing all this trouble?" Garrett said nothing. "My son made a mistake this morning, a stupid, childish mistake. But you need to understand something. This situation can go one of 2 ways. Either you accept an apology and a generous settlement, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and this all goes away, or you fight it, and I promise you I will destroy whatever is left of your pathetic life." Garrett looked at the senator for a long moment. There was no recognition in Pemberton's eyes. No flicker of memory. Just the arrogance of a man who had never faced real consequences. "Where is my daughter?" Garrett asked quietly. "I don't know anything about where is my daughter." The question hung in the air like a blade. Pemberton turned to Dutton. "His daughter. Child Services," Dutton muttered. "Standard procedure." Something shifted in the senator's expression. A crack in the facade. Some remnant of humanity that politics hadn't completely eroded. "You have a child. 7 years old. Her mother died 2 years ago. I'm all she has. And right now she's alone and terrified because your son wanted content for his followers." Pemberton was quiet for a moment. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his face went white. "Chief, we need to talk. Now. In private." They left without another word. Garrett sat back down on the metal bench and closed his eyes. Somewhere in this town, his daughter was crying for him. And there was nothing he could do. 45 minutes later, a convoy of black SUVs rolled into Maplewood. Dean Ashford was the first to notice. He'd been parked across from the police station waiting for developments when the vehicles appeared. Government plates, tinted windows, the kind of motorcade that didn't belong in a small Pennsylvania town. He grabbed his camera and started filming. The lead SUV stopped directly in front of the station. The door opened, and General Amanda Rhodes stepped out. She was 55 years old, with short gray hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded soldiers in 3 different wars. She wore her dress uniform, every medal gleaming her stars, catching the afternoon light. Behind her came Colonel Briggs and 2 other men in civilian clothes. Dean didn't recognize them, but something about the way they moved said military. Something about their eyes said dangerous. General Rhodes walked into the police station like she owned it. Dean lowered his camera, his heart racing. Whatever was about to happen in there, it was going to be big, and he was going to be the one to tell the world. The front door of the Maplewood police station had never opened for someone like General Amanda Rhodes. She walked through it like she was breaching an enemy compound, shoulders squared, eyes scanning every movement, radiating authority. Colonel Briggs flanked her right side. The 2 men behind them were Medal of Honor recipients, though they wore no uniforms today. Their presence was enough. The desk sergeant stood up so fast he knocked over his coffee. General, can I help?" "I need to see the man you're holding in your cells, Garrett Cole, now." I don't have authorization to—" "Son." Rhodes stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "I have authorization from the Secretary of Defense. I have a direct line to the President's Chief of Staff. And I have approximately 0 patience for bureaucratic delays. Take me to him or I will have this building surrounded by military police within the hour and conduct my own inspection." The sergeant's face went pale. "Yes, ma'am." "Right this way, ma'am." He led them down the hallway toward the holding cells. They passed Deputy Ray Dutton coming the other direction. He stopped cold when he saw the stars on Rhodes's shoulders, the medals on her chest, the look in her eyes. "What the hell?" "Deputy." Rhodes didn't slow down. "You and I will be having a conversation very soon. I suggest you start preparing your explanation for why a decorated war hero is sitting in your jail on fabricated charges." Dutton's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No sound came out. Rhodes kept walking. Senator Harrison Pemberton was already in the holding area, still on his phone, still trying to understand what was happening. He looked up when Rhodes entered, and something flickered across his face, recognition, confusion, and the beginning of fear. "General Rhodes." He pocketed his phone. "I wasn't aware the Pentagon had jurisdiction over local matters." "Senator Pemberton." Rhodes's voice could have frozen steel. "I wasn't aware your family had declared war on American veterans. Apparently we were both mistaken." "Now wait just a minute." "No." Rhodes held up her hand. "You've had your minute. Several of them, in fact. Now it's my turn." She walked to the cell where Garrett Cole sat on the metal bench, his back straight, his face unreadable. Their eyes met. And General Amanda Rhodes, commander of Joint Special Operations, a woman who had sent men into impossible missions and welcomed them home in flag-draped coffins, did something that made everyone in the room stop breathing. She saluted. "Master Sergeant Cole." Her voice carried a weight of respect that filled the cramped space. "It's been too long." Garrett stood slowly. He didn't return the salute. He couldn't, with his hand still bearing the marks of too tight handcuffs. But he nodded. "General, I apologize for not coming sooner. I only learned of your situation a few hours ago." "Not your fault, ma'am. I chose to disappear." Senator Pemberton stepped forward, his political instincts screaming that he was losing control of this situation. "General, I don't know what's going on here, but this man was arrested for threatening my son. Your son." Rhodes turned to face him, and Pemberton actually took a step back. "Yes, let's talk about your son. Let's talk about what your son did this morning." She pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. "At approximately 7:52 a.m., your son Marcus entered Maplewood Diner. Security footage shows him verbally harassing multiple patrons before focusing his attention on Master Sergeant Cole, who was eating breakfast alone. Your son then poured scalding hot coffee down Master Sergeant Cole's back. When Cole stood up and did nothing, absolutely nothing aggressive, your son called Deputy Dutton and had him arrested on false charges." I'm not finished." Rhodes's voice cracked like a whip. "Your son then filmed a 7-year-old girl crying for her father and posted it online for entertainment. That video has now been viewed over 5 million times. 5 million people have watched your family terrorize a child." Pemberton's face was turning red. "My son made a mistake in judgment, but this man... Rhodes held up the tablet, showing a photograph. "Do you recognize this image, Senator?" Pemberton looked at the screen. His expression shifted from anger to confusion. The photo showed a younger Garrett Cole in tactical gear, covered in dust and blood, carrying an unconscious man through rubble. The unconscious man wore a torn suit and had silver hair matted with debris. The unconscious man was Senator Harrison Pemberton. "Aleppo," Rhodes's voice dropped. "December 2018. Congressional delegation ambush. Your vehicle was hit by an IED. The building you took shelter in was struck by a mortar round. You were trapped under debris, bleeding internally with enemy fighters closing in." Pemberton's face had gone white. His hands were trembling. "You were rescued," Rhodes continued. "Carried 3 miles through hostile territory to an extraction point. The man who carried you took 2 bullets during the escape, 1 in his leg, 1 in his shoulder. He nearly bled out. But he didn't stop. He didn't leave you behind." She pointed at Garrett. "That's him. Master Sergeant Garrett Cole, codename Wraith, the most decorated special operator in modern history. Every mission classified. Every act of heroism buried in files that will never see daylight." Rhodes stepped closer to Pemberton, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. "He saved your life, Senator. He carried you on his back while bullets tore through his body. And today, your son poured coffee on him and had him arrested for the crime of existing." The silence that followed was absolute. Pemberton stared at Garrett through the bars. His mouth moved, but no words came out. Garrett stared back. His expression hadn't changed. "I didn't know." Pemberton's voice was barely a whisper. "I never saw his face. I was unconscious." They told me it was a team effort, that no single person— It was him. Rhodes cut him off. Just him? The rest of his team was killed in the initial ambush. Cole went back alone, against orders, against every tactical recommendation, because he doesn't leave people behind. She turned to look at Garrett, and her voice softened. Even people who don't deserve it. Colonel Briggs stepped forward. General, we have another matter to address. His daughter. Yes, ma'am. She was taken by Child Services approximately 2 hours ago. Current location is a temporary group facility on the east side of town. Garrett's hands clenched at his sides. It was the first visible emotion he'd shown since Rhodes arrived. Get her. Rhodes's command was instant. Colonel, take Matthews and Garcia. Bring that little girl back to her father. Now. Yes, ma'am. Briggs and the 2 Medal of Honor recipients moved toward the door. Wait. Pemberton's voice stopped them. I'll make the call. It'll be faster if I— Senator. Rhodes's voice was ice. I think you've done enough. Don't you? Pemberton closed his mouth. Briggs and his team left. Rhodes turned to the desk sergeant who was still standing in the corner looking like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. Release him. Now. Ma'am, I need authorization from the chief. I am your authorization. Rhodes pulled out her phone. But if you need something more official, I can have the Attorney General on the line in about 30 seconds. Would you like me to wake him up? The sergeant practically ran to the cell door. The lock clicked open. Garrett Cole stepped out of the cell for the first time in 6 hours. He didn't look at Pemberton. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for news of his daughter. Master Sergeant. Rhodes approached him. I know you left this life behind. I know you wanted peace. But I need you to understand something. What happened today is going to have consequences. Big ones. The media already has the story. Within hours, the whole country is going to know who you are and what was done to you. I don't care about that. I know. You only care about Lily. Rhodes's voice gentled. She's going to be okay. I promise you that. But when this is over, there are going to be people who want to thank you. People who want to honor you publicly. I need to know how you want to handle that. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. I just want to take my daughter home. Then that's what we'll do. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Dean Ashford appeared in the doorway, camera in hand, eyes wide. General Rhodes, I'm Dean Ashford, Regional Press. I was hoping— Mr. Ashford. Rhodes held up her hand. Not now. But the public deserves to know, and they will. But right now, this man needs to see his daughter. Everything else can wait. Dean hesitated. Then he lowered his camera. Okay, but I'm not leaving. This story is going to be told. I'm counting on it. Rhodes gave him a look that was almost approving. Someone needs to tell the truth about what happened here today. Deputy Ray Dutton had been standing in the corner trying to make himself invisible. It wasn't working. Rhodes turned to him. Deputy Dutton, I understand you were the arresting officer. Dutton swallowed hard. I was responding to a call. You were responding to a lie. You knew it was a lie. And you made an arrest anyway because Senator Pemberton's family has been lining your pockets for years. That's not— We have your financial records, Deputy. Every payment, every favor, every complaint that was buried because you had powerful friends. Rhodes stepped closer. That ends today. You have 2 choices: resign immediately and cooperate with the federal investigation that's coming, or fight it and spend the next 10 years in prison. Dutton's face crumbled. I was just doing my job. Your job is to protect and serve, not to protect the privileged and serve their interests. Rhodes turned away from him. Make your choice, but make it fast. The door burst open. Colonel Briggs entered first, holding the door wide. And then Lily Cole came running through. Daddy! Time stopped. Garrett dropped to his knees, arms open, and his daughter crashed into him with the force of 7 years of love and 6 hours of terror. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, I'm here, baby, I'm here. Daddy's here." He held her so tight, his whole body wrapped around her small frame, his face buried in her hair. His shoulders shook. Tears streamed down his cheeks. The first tears anyone had seen from him since the day his wife died. "They took me away," Lily sobbed. "They put me in a room with strangers and they wouldn't tell me where you were, and I was so scared, Daddy, I was so scared." "I know, sweetheart, I know. But it's over now." "I've got you. No one's ever going to take you away from me again, I promise. I promise on everything I am." General Rhodes watched the reunion with tears in her own eyes. Colonel Briggs stood at attention, his jaw tight, his eyes suspiciously bright. Even the desk sergeant wiped his face with the back of his hand. Senator Pemberton watched too. And something in him broke. Not his pride that was already shattered, not his political ambitions, those were beyond saving. Something deeper, something he'd buried under decades of compromise and calculation. His conscience. He walked slowly toward Garrett and Lily, stopping a few feet away. "Mr. Cole." Garrett looked up, his arms still wrapped around his daughter. "I don't expect forgiveness." Pemberton's voice was hoarse. "I don't deserve it. What my son did, what I almost let happen, there's no excuse." He paused, struggling for words. "You saved my life. I've given speeches about that day. I've talked about the bravery of our military, and I didn't even know the face of the man who carried me to safety." He looked at Lily, who was staring at him with wide, fearful eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it." Garrett stood up slowly, lifting Lily with him. She wrapped her arms around his neck, clinging tight. "Senator," Garrett's voice was quiet, controlled. "I didn't save you because of who you were. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. The mission, the oath, that's all that mattered. But what your son did today, that's not on you, not directly, but what you do next, that is." Garrett met his eyes. "You can make this go away. Use your money, your power, your connections. Bury it like you've buried everything else. Or you can let the truth come out. Let people see what really happened. Let there be consequences. My son is 20 years old enough to know that cruelty has a cost. If you protect him from this, you're not saving him. You're making sure he never learns. You're making sure he becomes exactly what you're afraid he already is." Pemberton flinched like he'd been struck. "That's your choice, Senator, not mine. I'm going to take my daughter home now. I'm going to make her dinner and read her a story and hold her until she falls asleep. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up and be her father. That's all I care about." He turned and walked toward the door. Lily looked back over his shoulder at Pemberton, at Rhodes, at the room full of adults who had failed her. "My daddy is a hero," she said, her small voice carrying clearly. "And you're all mean." Then they were gone. Rhodes let out a long breath. "Well," she looked at Pemberton. "You heard the man. What's it going to be?" Outside the police station, the media had gathered. Someone had leaked. Someone always leaked. Within hours of the first viral video, the counter-narrative had begun spreading the real security footage, the military records, the story of a hero betrayed. Dean Ashford stood at the front of the pack, his camera ready. When Garrett emerged carrying Lily, the flashbulbs exploded. Mr. Cole, can you tell us what happened?" "Master Sergeant Cole. How does it feel to be vindicated?" "Sir, do you have any comment about Senator Pemberton?" Garrett kept walking, shielding Lily's face from the cameras. He didn't speak. He didn't slow down. But Helen Marsh was waiting by her car keys in hand. "Come on, honey." She opened the back door. "Let's get you two home." Garrett looked at her, this woman who had stood up when no one else would, who had protected his daughter when the world was falling apart. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I won't forget this." Helen's eyes were wet. "You don't need to thank me. You just need to take care of that little girl." They climbed into the car. Helen drove away from the chaos, away from the cameras, away from the police station, where everything had changed. In the back seat, Lily had fallen asleep against her father's chest, exhausted by terror and tears. Garrett held her close, watching the town pass by outside the window. 3 years. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of building a quiet life in this small town, trying to forget the blood and fire and death that had defined his existence. All of it was over now. The world knew his name. At the Pemberton estate, Marcus was watching the news unfold on his phone. The comments had shifted. The tide had turned. Where there had been laughter and approval, now there was rage. "Monster. Disgusting excuse for a human being. Your father should be ashamed. Hope you rot." His hands were shaking so badly he could barely scroll. Jade had left an hour ago, fleeing before the wave of hatred crashed down on her too. She'd deleted her videos, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots were everywhere. Her face, her laugh, her mocking voice, all preserved forever. Her follower count was plummeting. Sponsors were pulling out. By morning, her influencer career would be ashes. And Marcus was alone. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "We need to talk. Come to the study, now." Marcus walked through the house on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Every step echoed. Every shadow seemed to judge him. His father was standing by the window when he entered. "Close the door." Marcus obeyed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Pemberton turned around, and Marcus saw something he'd never seen before in his father's eyes. Shame. "Do you know who that man was?" Pemberton's voice was barely controlled. "The man you humiliated, the man you had arrested, the man whose daughter you filmed crying, 'Dad, I didn't know. He saved my life.'" Pemberton's voice cracked. 7 years ago. Aleppo. I was dying under a collapsed building, and that man you called homeless, pathetic, worthless, he carried me 3 miles through enemy territory with bullets in his body. He almost died saving me, and I never even knew his face. Marcus's legs gave out. He sat down heavily on the nearest chair. I couldn't have known. That's the point. Pemberton walked toward him, his footsteps heavy. You couldn't have known. He could have been anyone, a veteran, a teacher, a father, a human being, and it wouldn't have mattered to you. You would have done the same thing regardless, because you've never seen people as people. You've only seen them as entertainment, as content, as things to be used. Dad, I did this. Pemberton's voice dropped to a whisper. I raised you. I gave you everything except consequences. I taught you that money and power could fix anything, and look what it made you. Marcus was crying now, actually crying, for the first time since he was a child. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. Sorry doesn't fix this, Marcus. Sorry doesn't give that little girl back the hours she spent terrified in a government facility. Sorry doesn't erase the videos that will follow you for the rest of your life. Pemberton sat down across from his son. Tomorrow morning, you and I are going to hold a press conference. You are going to apologize publicly, not a PR statement, not a lawyer-approved script, a real apology. You are going to take full responsibility. And then you are going to withdraw from Yale and spend the next year volunteering at a veterans organization, not for the cameras, not for the optics, because you need to learn what sacrifice actually looks like. Dad, my future, Your future is whatever you make of it after this. But the path you were on, that's over. The person you were this morning, he dies today. Either you become someone better, or you become nothing at all. Marcus stared at his father through tear-blurred eyes, and for the first time in his life, he understood. There was no escape hatch, no fix. No one to make this go away. He had to change, or he would be destroyed. At Helen's small house on the edge of town, Garrett sat in a worn armchair with Lily asleep in his lap. Helen had made tea. She sat across from him, not speaking, just present. The silence was comfortable. After a while, Garrett spoke. My wife made me promise. Before she died, she made me promise I'd give Lily a normal life, a quiet life. No more missions, no more secrets, no more danger. Helen listened. I thought I could do it. Disappear, become no one, just be her dad. He looked down at his sleeping daughter. I almost believed I could leave it all behind. Can you? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. After today, the whole world knows my face, my name. Everything I tried to bury is going to come out. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Helen leaned forward. Maybe hiding was never the answer. Maybe this little girl needs to know who her father really is. All of it. The good and the bad. Garrett's hand rested on Lily's back, feeling her breathe. She already knows I'm her dad. That's all that should matter. It is all that matters. Helen smiled gently. The rest is just noise. Let the world talk. Let them tell your story. You just keep doing what you've been doing, loving that child with everything you have. Garrett looked at the woman who had shown him kindness when he expected cruelty. Why did you help us? You didn't know who I was. You could have stayed out of it. Helen's eyes grew distant. My brother came back from Vietnam in 1971. Different. Broken. The country he'd fought for treated him like dirt, called him a baby killer, spit on him in the street. Her voice trembled. He took his own life 6 months later. Couldn't handle being hated for doing what his country asked him to do. She wiped her eyes. When I saw what they were doing to you, when I saw that boy mocking you and that deputy dragging you away, I thought about my brother, and I swore I wouldn't let it happen again. Not if I could help it. Garrett reached across and took her hand. I'm sorry about your brother. Me too. Helen squeezed his fingers. But maybe this is why I'm still here. Maybe this is what all those years of watching and waiting were for. To help you. To help her. Lily stirred in her father's lap, murmuring something in her sleep. Garrett pulled her closer. Thank you, Helen. For everything. You're welcome, sweetheart. Helen stood up. Now I'm going to make that little girl some dinner. And you're going to sit right there and hold her. That's an order. For the first time since the nightmare began, Garrett Cole smiled. Yes, ma'am. The next morning came faster than Garrett expected. He'd slept on Helen's couch with Lily curled against his chest, her small fingers clutching his shirt, even in her dreams. He hadn't slept that deeply in years, maybe because the worst had already happened, and he'd survived it. His phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Unknown number. He answered quietly, careful not to wake Lily. Cole. Master Sergeant, it's General Rhodes. I wanted to give you a heads up before you turn on the news. Garrett's jaw tightened. What happened? The story broke. All of it. Someone leaked the Aleppo files, not the classified operational details, but enough. Your identity, your service record, the rescue. By the time most people finished their morning coffee, you were the most famous veteran in America. Garrett closed his eyes. I never wanted that. I know, but sometimes the world needs heroes, and it doesn't ask permission. Rhodes paused. There's more. Senator Pemberton held a press conference an hour ago. He and his son both spoke. I think you should watch it. I don't need to hear their apologies. It's not just an apology, it's something else. Something I've never seen a politician do. Just watch it, Cole. Then call me back. She hung up. Helen appeared in the doorway, already dressed, holding a cup of coffee. I heard. She handed him the remote. The TV's on in the kitchen. I'll watch Lily. Garrett hesitated, looking down at his sleeping daughter. Go. Helen's voice was gentle. She's safe. I've got her. He transferred Lily carefully to Helen's arms and walked to the kitchen. The small television on the counter was already tuned to a national news channel. The headline scrolling across the bottom read, Senator Pemberton and Son Address Viral Incident. Garrett leaned against the counter and watched. The press conference had been held outside the Pemberton estate. No podium, no teleprompters, just the senator and his son standing side by side facing a wall of cameras and microphones. Marcus spoke first. He looked different. The arrogance that had defined his face at the diner was gone, replaced by something raw and broken. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hands shook visibly. I don't have a prepared statement. His voice cracked on the first sentence. Because there's nothing I can say that will make what I did okay. There's no excuse. There's no explanation. I was cruel. I was vicious. I attacked a man who had done nothing wrong, and I terrorized his daughter for entertainment. He paused, struggling to continue. I've spent my whole life believing that money and status made me better than other people. I've spent my whole life treating people like they existed for my amusement, and it took destroying an innocent family to make me see what I really was. Marcus looked directly into the camera. To Mr. Cole, I know you're probably watching this. I know an apology means nothing after what I did, but I need you to hear it anyway. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the coffee. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for filming your daughter while she cried for you. I'm sorry for every second of pain I caused. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm withdrawing from Yale. I'm going to spend the next year working at a veterans shelter, not for publicity, not for rehabilitation, but because I need to learn what it means to serve others instead of myself. I need to learn what sacrifice looks like. I need to become a different person than the one who stood in that diner yesterday. He stepped back. Senator Pemberton stepped forward. The man who had built a career on confidence and control looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His shoulders were slumped. His voice was hoarse. My son has spoken for himself. Now I need to speak for myself. He took a breath. 7 years ago, I almost died in Aleppo. A building collapsed on top of me. I was trapped, bleeding, certain I was going to die in a foreign country, thousands of miles from my family, and then a man I'd never met carried me to safety. He took bullets for me. He almost bled to death, saving my life. Pemberton's voice broke. I gave speeches about that day. I talked about the bravery of our military. I used that story to win votes, to build my reputation, to convince people I understood sacrifice. And I never once tried to find out who saved me. I never once sought out the man who nearly died so I could live. He looked down. That man was Garrett Cole. Yesterday, my son poured coffee on him and had him arrested. My son filmed his daughter crying and posted it online for laughs. And when I found out, my first instinct wasn't horror, it was damage control. It was figuring out how to make this go away. He looked back up at the cameras. I've spent my entire career protecting people like me from consequences. I've used my power to bury scandals, silence critics, and shield my family from accountability. And it took watching my son destroy an American hero to realize what I'd become. Pemberton straightened slightly. I'm not going to seek re-election. I'm going to use whatever time I have left in office to push for reforms, real reforms in how we treat our veterans. Not because it will help my legacy, because it's the right thing to do, because I owe a debt I can never repay. He paused. To Garrett Cole and his daughter Lily, I'm sorry. Those words are inadequate. They're pathetic compared to what you suffered. But they're all I have. I'm sorry. The press conference ended. Garrett stood in the kitchen staring at the screen. He'd expected excuses, deflection, the usual political dance of non-apologies and redirected blame. He hadn't expected this. His phone buzzed again. Rhodes. You watched it? Yeah. What do you think? Garrett was quiet for a moment. I think people can change. I've seen it happen in war. Men who did terrible things finding their way back to being human. He paused. I don't know if Pemberton and his son are sincere. Time will tell. But at least they're trying. That's more than most people do. You're a better man than me, Cole. I'd want blood. I've spilled enough blood for one lifetime. I just want peace now. You might actually get it. Rhodes's tone shifted. The FBI is moving on Deputy Dutton. They've opened a civil rights investigation based on the evidence Officer Mitchell provided. Turns out our young rookie has been documenting his corruption for months. She just needed someone to listen. Mitchell, the one who came to my cell. The same. She's probably going to lose her job for what she did. Dutton's allies are already trying to retaliate, but she doesn't seem to care. Some people have more integrity than self-preservation. Then Garrett thought about the young officer who had looked him in the eye and told him she saw the truth. What's going to happen to her? That depends on how much noise we make. The Pentagon is already putting pressure on the town council, and the media attention isn't hurting. Everyone loves a whistleblower story. Can you help her? I can try. Why? Because she stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. People like that should be protected. Rhodes was quiet for a moment. You know, Cole, most people in your position would be focused on themselves right now, on their own vindication, on making their enemies pay. I told you, I've had enough of fighting. I just want to take care of my daughter and live a quiet life. You might get that too. But first, there's going to be some noise, a lot of noise. The country is watching. They want to see justice done. Then let them watch. As long as Lily is safe, I don't care what happens to anyone else. He hung up. Helen was standing in the doorway. Lily awake now, and holding her hand. Daddy? Lily's voice was still sleepy. Are you okay? Garrett knelt down and opened his arms. His daughter ran to him. I'm okay, baby. Everything's going to be okay now. The next 72 hours were chaos. News trucks descended on Maplewood like locusts. Reporters knocked on every door, interviewed every local, tried desperately to find anyone who would talk about Garrett Cole. Most people had nothing to say, but some did. Helen gave one interview. Just one. She sat on her porch and told the story simply what she'd seen, what she'd done, why she'd done it. He's just a man trying to raise his daughter, she said. He comes into my diner twice a week, orders the same thing every time, never causes trouble, never asks for anything. And those people treated him like he was garbage, like he was nothing. Her voice hardened. Well, he's not nothing. He's a hero. And even if he wasn't, even if he was exactly what they called him, he still deserved to be treated with dignity. We all do. The interview went viral. Within 24 hours, donations started pouring into a GoFundMe someone had set up for Helen's Diner, home of the hero's breakfast. Helen hadn't asked for it, hadn't wanted it. But the money kept coming anyway. $500,000 in 3 days. Helen called the organizers and told them to split it half to her half to a veteran's mental health fund. "I don't need that much money," she said. "But I know people who do." The country fell in love with her. Deputy Ray Dutton's fall was not as graceful. The FBI investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Officer Sarah Mitchell's documentation was thorough. Years of buried complaints, falsified reports, evidence of payments from wealthy families in exchange for favorable treatment. But the real bombshell came from an unexpected source. 3 other officers came forward. They'd been silent for years, afraid of retaliation, afraid of losing their jobs and pensions. But watching Mitchell's courage, watching her risk everything to do the right thing, something shifted. "If she can do it, so can we," one of them told investigators. The testimony was damning. Dutton had been running a protection racket for nearly a decade. Wealthy families paid him to make problems disappear. DUIs became equipment malfunctions. Assault charges became misunderstandings. And anyone who tried to expose him was threatened, transferred, or fired. Senator Pemberton's payments were just the tip of the iceberg. By the end of the week, Dutton was facing 12 federal charges. His badge was gone. His pension was frozen. And his former allies were scrambling to distance themselves as fast as they could. He gave one interview to a local reporter who caught him outside his lawyer's office. "I was just doing my job," he said, his face pale and sweaty. "I was following orders. The senator told me to. The senator told you to falsely arrest innocent people." Dutton's mouth opened and closed. No comment. He disappeared into the building. The interview played on every channel for days. At Yale University, the administration moved quickly. Marcus Pemberton's enrollment was suspended pending review, which everyone understood to mean permanent expulsion without the legal liability of actually using that word. His fraternity brothers, who had laughed at his videos and shared them widely, suddenly couldn't remember ever being his friend. His social media followers, the ones who hadn't already unfollowed, turned vicious. Death threats, doxing attempts, calls for violence that made even the most jaded internet observers uncomfortable. Marcus deleted everything. Deleted his Instagram, deleted his Twitter, deleted his TikTok, deleted every trace of his online existence. It didn't help. The screenshots were already everywhere. His face, his words, his cruelty preserved forever in the digital amber of 1,000 reposts. He would never outrun this. Jade Sinclair's collapse was even more spectacular. Her followers had turned on her with a ferocity that was almost frightening. The same people who had liked and shared and commented heart emojis on her content were now calling her a monster. Cancel her. She laughed at a crying child. Disgusting human being. Every brand deal evaporated. Every sponsorship vanished. The management company that had been grooming her for bigger things sent a terse email terminating their relationship. She tried to apologize, posted a tearful video explaining that she hadn't understood the situation that she'd been swept up in the moment that she was deeply sorry. The comments were brutal. Crocodile tears. "Sorry you got caught. Go away forever." She deleted the apology video after 6 hours. Then she deleted her account entirely. At 20 years old, Jade Sinclair was finished. Her dreams of fame and fortune were ash. All she had left was the knowledge that millions of people had seen her at her worst and decided she wasn't worth saving. Officer Sarah Mitchell expected to be fired. She'd gone over her supervisor's head. She'd sent evidence to the FBI without authorization. She'd violated about a dozen departmental protocols and probably a few laws. Instead, she got promoted. The new chief of police, appointed after the old one, retired amid the scandal, called her into his office on her 4th day back. Mitchell, sit down. Sarah sat, her spine rigid, waiting for the hammer to fall. You did something incredibly stupid last week. Yes, sir. You also did something incredibly brave. Sarah blinked. Sir? You saw corruption, and you reported it. You gathered evidence, and you took it to people who could act on it. You risked your career, your safety, maybe your life to do the right thing. The chief leaned forward. That's exactly the kind of officer this department needs. That's exactly the kind of officer I want leading others. He slid a badge across the desk. Sergeant Stripes. This is a field promotion. You'll be training new recruits, teaching them what real policing looks like. Think you can handle that? Sarah stared at the badge. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, and then go out there and make this department something worth believing in again. Sarah picked up the badge, her hands trembling slightly. Yes, sir. She walked out of that office with her head high and her heart pounding. She'd done the right thing, and for once doing the right thing had been rewarded. At the Maplewood diner, business had never been better. Helen couldn't keep up with the demand. People drove hours just to eat at the Heroes booth, booth 7, where Garrett had been sitting when Marcus Pemberton walked in and changed everything. She hired 3 new servers, expanded the kitchen, put up a sign in the window that read, "Everyone deserves dignity, no exceptions." But the best part wasn't the money or the fame. It was the letter that arrived on the 7th day. Handwritten, no return address. Postmarked from Washington, D.C. Helen opened it with shaking hands. Dear Helen, I don't know how to thank you properly for what you did. You protected my daughter when I couldn't. You stood up when everyone else stayed silent. You treated us like human beings when the world was treating us like garbage. Lily talks about you all the time. She calls you Miss Helen who makes the good pie. She says you're one of the nicest people she's ever met. She's not wrong. I've enclosed something that belonged to my wife, Sarah. She died 2 years ago, but she would have loved you. She was the same kind of person, someone who saw the good in everyone and fought for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. It's a small thing, a locket. She wore it on our wedding day. I want you to have it because I think she would have wanted that too. Thank you, Helen, for everything. Garrett. Inside the envelope was a delicate silver locket on a thin chain. Helen opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, and a little girl with dark pigtails laughing at the camera. Helen sat down heavily, tears streaming down her face. She'd spent 62 years wondering what her life was for. Now she knew. At the small rental house on the edge of Maplewood, Garrett was trying to remember how to be normal. It wasn't easy. Every time he left the house, someone recognized him. People wanted to shake his hand, thank him for his service, tell him how sorry they were for what happened. Reporters still called constantly. Interview requests piled up by the dozens. He turned them all down. Daddy, why don't you want to be on TV? Lily asked one morning, watching the news coverage of the Maplewood hero for what felt like the 100th time. Garrett sat down beside her. Because I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just your dad. But they say you saved that man's life, the one with the mean son. I did, a long time ago. But that doesn't make me special. Lots of people do brave things. Lots of people save lives. They just don't get on TV for it. Lily thought about this. Miss Helen saved me, she said finally. When those people took me away, she was there. She told me everything would be okay. She let me hold her hand. Garrett's throat tightened. You're right. Miss Helen is a hero too. So maybe everyone's a hero sometimes, when they need to be. Garrett looked at his daughter, 7 years old, wise beyond her years, still somehow hopeful after everything she'd been through. Yeah, baby. Maybe everyone is. The phone rang. Garrett checked the caller ID. General Rhodes. I need to take this. Can you go finish your breakfast? Lily nodded and scampered off to the kitchen. Garrett answered. General? Cole? I've got news. Some good, some complicated. Start with the good. The FBI is wrapping up the Dutton investigation. He's going to plead guilty to avoid trial, looking at 5 to 7 years minimum. His pension is gone. His reputation is destroyed. He'll never work in law enforcement again. And the Pembertons, no criminal charges for Marcus technically filing a false police report is a misdemeanor, and no prosecutor wants to touch it with the political implications. But he's done. Yale expelled him formally yesterday. No other school will take him. He's radioactive. What about the senator? That's the complicated part. Rhodes paused. He's actually doing what he promised. The Veterans Reform Bill he introduced is gaining serious traction, bipartisan support, real funding, real accountability measures. If it passes, it could help millions of people. You think he's sincere? I think he's terrified and guilty and desperate to make amends. Whether that's the same as sincere, I don't know. But the result is the same. Good things are happening because of what you went through. Garrett was quiet for a moment. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. But sometimes that's how change happens. Someone suffers, and the world pays attention, and things get better for everyone else. Cold comfort. Yeah, it is. Rhodes's voice softened. How are you holding up, Cole, really? Garrett looked toward the kitchen, where he could hear Lily singing to herself as she ate her cereal. I'm okay. She's okay. That's all that matters. Good. You deserve some peace. She paused. There's one more thing. You're being awarded the Medal of Freedom. Presidential ceremony. Next month. No. Cole, I said no. I don't want ceremonies. I don't want medals. I just want to be left alone. It's not just about you. It's about every veteran who's been mistreated, disrespected, forgotten. Seeing you honored publicly, it matters to people. It gives them hope. Garrett closed his eyes. Let me think about it. That's all I ask. Call me when you decide. She hung up. Garrett set down the phone and walked to the kitchen. Lily was drawing at the table, her cereal half finished, her tongue poking out in concentration. What are you drawing, baby? She held up the paper. It was a picture of 2 figures, a tall man and a small girl, standing in front of a house with flowers and a sun and a dog that looked suspiciously like a German shepherd. It's us, Lily said. In our forever home, with a puppy. Garrett felt his heart crack open. We don't have a puppy, sweetheart. Not yet, Lily grinned. But we will, when everything's normal again. Garrett sat down beside her and pulled her close. You know what, I think you're right. When everything's normal again, we'll get a puppy. Promise, promise. Lily went back to her drawing, adding a big red heart above the little family. And Garrett sat there holding his daughter, watching her create a future on paper. For the first time in a very long time, he believed it might actually come true. 3 months had passed since the morning that changed everything. Maplewood had transformed. Not in obvious ways, the streets still looked the same, the diner still served the same coffee, the leaves still fell from the same oak trees that had stood for 100 years. But something underneath had shifted. Something in the way people treated each other. The Dignity for All signs that started appearing in shop windows after the incident had multiplied. What began as a handful of handmade posters became a movement. Local businesses adopted codes of conduct. The high school started a program called See the Person, teaching students to look beyond appearances and assumptions, all because one man had refused to fight back. Garrett Cole had become a symbol without ever asking to be one. At the Maplewood police station, Sergeant Sarah Mitchell was training her third class of recruits. "Remember," she said, pointing at the new protocol checklist displayed on her monitor, "we don't assume, we verify, and we treat every single person who walks through that door with the exact same level of respect, whether they're wearing a three-piece suit or clothes from a donation bin." The young recruit in front of her nodded earnestly. "Yes, Sergeant." "That's the Cole Protocol, named after the man who showed this whole town what real strength looks like." Sarah paused, her voice softening. "He could have destroyed Marcus Pemberton that day, could have broken him in half without breaking a sweat. Instead, he stood there and took it, because he knew that violence wouldn't solve anything, because he knew his daughter was watching." She looked out the window at the street beyond. "That's the kind of strength I want you to carry with you. Not the ability to use force, but the wisdom to know when not to." The recruit straightened. "I understand, Sergeant." "Good. Now go run those background checks. And remember, everyone has a story. Our job is to protect them, not judge them." The young man hurried off. Sarah turned back to her computer, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Ray Dutton, who was currently serving his 5th month of a 7-year sentence. His appeals had failed. His pension was gone. The network of wealthy families who had protected him for decades had evaporated the moment federal subpoenas arrived. The system had worked. Slowly, painfully, but it had worked. And Sarah Mitchell had helped make it happen. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for standing up. Not many people would have. GC." Sarah smiled and tucked her phone away. Some rewards were better than medals. At the edge of town, past the last row of houses and down a dirt road that most people had forgotten existed, Garrett Cole had built something new. Not literally built, the small cottage had been standing for decades, weathered by time and neglect. But he'd restored it with his own hands over the past 3 months. Fixed the roof, replaced the porch boards, planted a garden where weeds had grown wild. It wasn't much. 3 rooms, a kitchen, a bathroom that sometimes ran cold in the mornings. But it was theirs. Lily loved it. She had her own room now, painted pale yellow, her mother's favorite color. She had a bookshelf filled with stories, a window that looked out at the woods, and a backyard where she could run and play and be a child again. And she had a dog. Atlas was a 2-year-old German Shepherd mix from the county shelter, not purebred, not trained, just a big goofy animal with floppy ears and a tail that never stopped wagging. Garrett had taken one look at him and known. "That one," he'd told the shelter worker. "He's ours." Atlas had bounded over to Lily like he'd been waiting for her his whole life. She'd dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around his neck, and that was that. Family. On this particular morning, a crisp Saturday in late February, Garrett sat on the front porch with a cup of coffee, watching Lily throw a ball for Atlas in the yard. The dog was too excited to actually retrieve it properly, so mostly he just ran in circles while Lily laughed. It was the best sound in the world. Garrett's phone rang. He checked the screen. Colonel Briggs. "Colonel?" "Garrett, how are you holding up?" "Better. Every day a little better." "Good to hear. Listen, I'm driving through Pennsylvania next week. Thought I might stop by if you're open to visitors." Garrett smiled. "You're always welcome. Bring that venison jerky you mentioned. Atlas has developed a taste for it." "Will do." Briggs paused. "There's something else. Someone wants to see you. Someone you might not expect, Garrett's smile faded. Who? Marcus Pemberton. The name hit like a physical blow. No. Just hear me out. I said no, Walter. That family has taken enough from me. I don't owe them anything, least of all my time. I know. I know you don't. Briggs's voice was gentle, but the kid has changed Garrett. Really changed. He's been volunteering at the veterans shelter in Philadelphia for 3 months now. Not for cameras, not for publicity, nobody even knows he's there. He uses a different name, works the night shift in the kitchen, scrubs floors, does the worst jobs without complaining. Garrett said nothing. He asked to see you, just once, just to say what he needs to say in person. After that, he'll disappear from your life forever. Briggs paused. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to listen. Garrett watched Lily tackle Atlas to the ground, both of them rolling in the dead leaves, her giggles echoing across the yard. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. The line went dead. Garrett set down his phone and stared at it for a long time. 3 months ago, Marcus Pemberton had been a monster. A cruel, entitled child who had destroyed Garrett's anonymity, terrorized his daughter, and nearly cost them everything. But people could change. Garrett knew that better than anyone. He'd been a different person once. A weapon. A ghost who moved through the world, leaving death in his wake. He'd done things that still haunted his dreams, necessary. Things justified things, but terrible nonetheless. And then Sarah had gotten sick, and everything had shifted. He remembered the last conversation they'd had 3 days before she died. Promise me something, she'd whispered, her hand so thin and fragile in his. Anything. Promise me you'll let go of the anger. All of it. The rage you carry, the darkness you think you've hidden from everyone. I see it, Garrett. I've always seen it. Sarah, let it go. For Lily. For yourself. Her eyes had been so clear, even at the end. The man I fell in love with wasn't a killer. He was a protector. Someone who would do anything to keep innocent people safe. That's who you really are. Don't let the other thing win. He'd promised. And for 3 years, he'd kept that promise. Even when Marcus Pemberton poured coffee down his back. Even when Deputy Dutton dragged him away in handcuffs. Even when they took his daughter, and he wanted to burn the whole world down. He'd let go of the anger. Maybe it was time to let go of something else, too. The next Saturday, Colonel Briggs arrived in his vintage Mustang, a cooler of venison jerky in the back seat, and a nervous young man in the passenger seat. Garrett was waiting on the porch. He watched Marcus Pemberton get out of the car. The transformation was striking. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a worn hoodie. The arrogant posture had collapsed into something humbler, smaller. The boy's face was thinner, his eyes carrying a weight they hadn't held before. 3 months of real work. 3 months of facing the consequences of his actions. 3 months of learning what it meant to serve instead of be served. Marcus walked toward the porch slowly, like a man approaching a firing squad. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Mr. Cole." Garrett said nothing. "I know I don't deserve to be here. I know you probably want to slam that door in my face, and I wouldn't blame you. But I needed to say this in person, not through lawyers or letters or any of that coward stuff." Marcus took a breath. "What I did to you that day was evil. Not a mistake. Not a lapse in judgment. Evil. I looked at another human being and decided he was worthless because of how he dressed, where he ate breakfast, how much money I thought he had. I decided I had the right to humiliate him, to assault him, to have him arrested for crimes he didn't commit." His voice cracked. "And then I filmed your daughter, while she was crying, while she was begging for her father. I filmed her, and I laughed, and I posted it online like it was content, like her pain was entertainment." Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times. The look on her face, the sound of her voice. I hear it when I try to sleep. I see it when I close my eyes. He looked up at Garrett. I used to think I was a good person who sometimes did bad things. Now I know the truth. I was a bad person who never faced consequences. He straightened slightly. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I'm not entitled to it. I'm here to tell you that I'm trying to be different. I work at a veterans shelter now. I serve meals to men and women who sacrificed everything for this country. I clean their bathrooms. I wash their sheets. I listen to their stories. His voice dropped. And every single day I think about what I almost destroyed. A father and his daughter. A hero who wanted nothing but peace. A 7-year-old girl who already lost her mother. He took another breath. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to know that your suffering meant something. That it changed someone. That because of what happened to you, I'm not the same person anymore. Marcus pulled something from his pocket. An envelope worn and creased. This is my trust fund. All of it. Signed over to a charity that helps veterans' families. I don't want any part of that money anymore. It was given to me by people who thought they could buy their way out of everything, and I refuse to be that person anymore. He set the envelope on the porch step. I'll leave now. I won't bother you again. I needed you to know. He turned to walk away. Wait. Marcus froze. Garrett stood up slowly, his coffee cup still in his hand. You came a long way to say that. It wasn't far enough. Garrett studied the young man's face, looking for deception, looking for the old arrogance hiding beneath the surface. He found only exhaustion and grief and something that might have been hope. My wife died 2 years ago, Garrett said quietly. Cancer. She fought for 18 months and she fought hard, but in the end it took her anyway. Marcus didn't move. Before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise to let go of my anger, to choose who I wanted to be instead of being controlled by what I'd done and what had been done to me. Garrett took a step forward. I've killed men, Marcus, more than I can count. Some of them deserved it. Some of them were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I've done things that would keep you awake for the rest of your life. He stopped at the top of the steps, looking down at the boy who had tried to destroy him. I'm not a good man. I'm a man who's trying to be good. There's a difference. Every day I wake up and I make a choice to be the father my daughter needs, not the weapon my country made me. Marcus looked up, tears streaming down his face. That's what you did too, Garrett continued. You made a choice. You looked at who you were and you decided to be someone different. Most people never do that. Most people just find new ways to justify staying the same. He extended his hand. I don't forgive you for what you did to me. That coffee burned for a week, and I'll never forget the sound of my daughter screaming for me while I was in that cell. Marcus's face crumpled. But I believe you're trying to change, and that's more than most people ever manage. Garrett kept his hand extended. So no, I don't forgive you, but I'm willing to let this go. For my sake, for my daughter's sake, and maybe a little bit for yours. Marcus stared at the hand like it was a miracle. Then slowly he reached out and took it. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove me right. Garrett released his grip. Go back to that shelter. Keep serving those veterans. Keep being the person you're trying to become. And maybe someday you'll be able to forgive yourself. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He walked back to the car, got in, and closed the door. Colonel Briggs looked at Garrett from the driver's seat and nodded once, a soldier's acknowledgement of something that took more courage than any battlefield. Then the Mustang pulled away, taking Marcus Pemberton out of Garrett Cole's life forever. Lily appeared on the porch, Atlas at her heels. Daddy, who was that? Garrett turned to look at his daughter, 7 years old, fierce and fragile, and somehow still full of hope, despite everything she'd been through. Someone who's learning to be better, sweetheart, just like all of us. Lily thought about this. Was he sorry? Yes, baby, he was sorry. Did you forgive him? Garrett knelt down so he was at her level. Forgiveness is complicated, Lily. Sometimes people hurt us so badly that we can't forgive them, not really. But we can choose to stop carrying that hurt around with us. We can choose to put it down and walk away. Is that what you did? That's what I'm trying to do. Lily nodded solemnly. Mommy told me once that holding on to angry feelings is like holding a hot rock. It burns you more than whoever you're angry at. Garrett felt his eyes sting. Your mother was very wise. I know. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. I miss her. Me too, baby. Every single day. They held each other for a long moment, while Atlas circled around them, tail wagging, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. Finally, Lily pulled back. Daddy, yes. Can we make pancakes? Atlas wants pancakes. Garrett laughed a real laugh, deep and full and surprised out of him. Atlas wants pancakes, huh? He told me, with blueberries. Well, if Atlas said so, I guess we'd better make pancakes. He stood up and took her hand, leading her inside. Atlas bounded after them, and the screen door slammed shut behind them. 2 weeks later, Garrett made a decision. He called General Rhodes. I'll do it. Do what? The ceremony, the Medal of Freedom. But I have conditions. Name them. No press conference, no speeches. I accept the medal, I shake hands, and I leave. That's it. Rhodes was quiet for a moment. I can make that work. One more thing. I want Helen Marsh there, and Officer Sarah Mitchell, and Colonel Briggs, the people who actually made a difference. They should be recognized too. Done. Anything else? Garrett looked out the window at Lily playing with Atlas in the yard. Yeah, I want my daughter to see it. I want her to understand that her daddy isn't just the man who got coffee poured on him. I want her to know the whole story. She'll have a front row seat. Thank you, General. No Cole. Thank you. The ceremony was held in a small room at the Pentagon, not the White House. Garrett had insisted. No cameras, no reporters, no spectacle. Just a handful of people who understood what this moment meant. Helen Marsh was there, wearing a dress she'd bought special for the occasion, tears already streaming down her face. Sarah Mitchell stood in her dress uniform, spine straight, pride radiating from every inch of her. Colonel Briggs sat in the front row, his weathered face unreadable, but his eyes bright. And Lily sat on a chair that was too big for her Atlas at her feet. They'd made an exception for the dog watching her father with something like awe. The President of the United States stood at the podium. We're here today to honor a man who represents the best of what this country can be, the President said. Master Sergeant Garrett Cole served his nation for 20 years, in places most of us will never know about, doing things most of us will never understand. He saved lives. He protected the innocent. He faced down evil and refused to become evil himself. The President paused. 3 months ago, the world learned his name not through his choice, but through an act of cruelty that exposed what happens when privilege goes unchecked and dignity is forgotten. The country watched a man who could have responded with violence choose instead to respond with restraint. They watched a father protect his daughter not with his fists, but with his character. He turned to look at Garrett. Master Sergeant Cole didn't ask to be a symbol. He didn't want fame or recognition. He wanted only to raise his daughter in peace. But sometimes the world needs to see what real heroism looks like, not the kind that happens on battlefields, but the kind that happens in diners and police stations and all the small moments where we choose who we want to be. The president lifted the medal, a gleaming gold disc on a blue ribbon. For his extraordinary service to his nation, for his courage under fire and his dignity under assault, for reminding us all what strength truly means, I am honored to present Master Sergeant Garrett Cole with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He placed the ribbon around Garrett's neck. The small audience applauded. Garrett looked down at the medal, then up at his daughter. Lily was beaming. "That's my daddy," she whispered to Atlas loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's a hero." And in that moment, Garrett Cole finally believed it. Afterward, when the handshakes were done and the room had emptied, Garrett sat alone with Lily on a bench outside the building. The February air was cold, but neither of them minded. "Daddy, yeah, baby, are you happy?" Garrett looked at his daughter, this small, fierce, beautiful girl who had survived so much and still found reasons to laugh. "Yeah, Lily, I'm happy." "Good." She leaned against him, her head resting on his arm. "I'm happy too." They sat in silence for a while, watching people walk by, watching the world go about its business, watching life continue in all its ordinary, extraordinary ways. Finally, Lily spoke again. "Daddy, can we go home now?" Garrett smiled. "Yeah, baby, let's go home." He stood up and took her hand. Atlas trotted alongside them, tongue-lolling, tail wagging. And Garrett Cole, the ghost, the weapon, the man who had killed more enemies than he could count, walked toward the future with his daughter at his side and peace in his heart. The world would keep spinning. People would keep hurting each other and helping each other and making the same beautiful, terrible choices they'd always made. But here in this moment, none of that mattered. A father had his daughter, a daughter had her father, and somewhere in whatever place the dead go to rest, Sarah Cole was smiling. True strength doesn't announce itself with violence or volume. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stay quiet when the world is screaming at them to fight. Garrett Cole could have destroyed Marcus Pemberton with a single motion. Instead, he showed him what real power looks like, the power to choose restraint, the power to choose dignity, the power to choose love over revenge. In a world that celebrates cruelty and spectacle, may we all find the courage to be quietly strong. May we remember that the person we dismiss today might be the hero who saves us tomorrow. And may we never ever forget that every single human being, regardless of how they dress, where they eat, or how much money they have, deserves to be treated with dignity. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe that the quiet heroes among us deserve our respect and gratitude, please type Amen in the comments below. May God bless you. May He grant you the strength to stand firm when you face injustice, and may you always find your way home.